This episode is brought to you by HASA, providing products that deliver clean, healthy water for every aspect of everyday life. The bottom feeder battery-powered vacuum system, portable, powerful, and only weighs 12 pounds. And Skimmer. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software. Podcast listeners can try Skimmer for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. Yeah!
Hi, and welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'm going to go over some ways to save money on your pool route. And every time you save some money, of course, your profit margin goes up. And in this day and age where prices continuously rise, I think every moment you can save some money is a way to, of course, stay in business and keep providing the great service you need to provide for your customers. If you're looking to expand your pool service or get support out in the field, or if you just want one-on-one coaching, join my coaching program with over 270 members and growing. Learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Have you ever gone back to your favorite restaurant and to your chagrin, there's a note on the door that says they're no longer in business? This has happened to me and probably you a few times. And most recently, there was a restaurant here that was in business for like 20 years. And they were really inexpensive. And I always thought, well, how do these people make money? Well, of course, it wasn't too long before I realized they weren't making enough money. And they had that sign on the door saying, "Thank you for your service." And, after all these years, we had to close the business. And you, of course, don't want to do that to your pool service business. You want to keep making money and be profitable out there. There's a lot of different factors that cause increases in prices. If you were doing pool service during COVID, it was the chlorine shortage. It's actually a combination of many factors during the COVID-19 pandemic. One was the trichlor fire, the biolab factory burning. The other, of course, was the fact that everyone was using their pools, and then there was a shortage of chlorine because of that. It was just one of those explosions of pool use, plus the shortage, causing the prices to increase, sometimes as much as 100%. Then right after COVID, there was a kind of supply chain issue where everything was bogged down and things didn't get back to normal for probably about 8 or 9 months, and you couldn't get certain things. And it was one of those things where it makes you think about future economic issues, which, of course, is always something that's going to cause prices to rise. Currently, there's talks about tariffs, which will impact even products made in America because a lot of the plastics, a lot of the raw materials do come from other countries that will be affected by the tariffs. So this is something to always be aware of, that there's always going to be an economic factor that causes prices in the industry to go up, and very rarely, if ever, will cause prices in the industry to drop. So I say all of this so that you can have a mindset of being a saver and to always look at opportunities to save money. Now, I'm not talking about cutting corners and not providing the service that your customers expect. No one wants to get their product shrunken down. And this happens, of course, with a lot of products out there. Cereal boxes are smaller. The ketchup and mustard bottles are shaped kind of different so that they can have less volume but still appear to be the same size. And you want to provide that same great service without kind of shrinking down what you do for the customer. So the first thing, of course, and this is something that sounds counterintuitive, but it is something that makes a lot of sense if you look at the bottom line, and that is you don't want to ever have to shock your customer's pool. And it's really hard sometimes to pass on the cost of that to the customer unless they're totally at fault for the problem. Sometimes they are at fault, and then you can let them know that you had to add extra chemicals because they let the pool off all week. They're probably perfectly fine with that. But I think a lot of times when you're shocking a customer's pool, it's actually your fault as a service provider because you were doing something that you were not paying attention to certain things that were going on with the pool, and the pool started to get algae. Now, there are a lot of factors beyond your control. The pool could have very high cyanuric acid, making it hard to balance it. The pool could be heavy use. They may have had a party over there, and it could have turned the pool. These are circumstances that you may want to address with the customer and let them know that you're going to have to add extra chemicals to the pool because of the party they had. But in a lot of cases, you're shocking the pool because maybe you're not cleaning the filter as often as possible or running the pool as long as you should. And I'll address those two issues a little bit later. But the point is, the least you can shock the customer's pool and use up your chlorine products in their pool, the better off you are. How do you avoid shocking the pool? Well, I mentioned the runtime in the filter, but there's also the enhancers you can add to the pool and charge the customer for, which will essentially prevent algae growth even if something were to happen that was out of your control. I mentioned several times about this pool that is really big. They had it heated to 90 degrees for a party. The chlorine ran out, but I had two blue Polar X units in there, and that kept it from turning. Even with zero chlorine, there was no algae in the pool when I got there. And so there are enhancers, and the chlorine enhancers basically will prevent algae and make the chlorine more effective. And they are Polar X, you have your phosphates and enzymes, and then you have your borates to 50 parts per million. Those are the three primary enhancers that I use, and maybe there's a few more that you can think of, but those are the ones that I primarily use. There's also the solar ionizers. They have a solar panel on top, and they have a copper anode on the bottom. Those are also great at preventing algae. Whatever you can do to prevent algae in the pool. Now, back in my day, I'm an old school pool guy, used to put 2 ounces of sodium bromide in the pool, and that would prevent algae from growing, kind of like the first chlorine enhancer that was on the market. But as you know, sodium bromide does have a negative effect on the chlorine. It does build a bromine bank in the pool, and I think most of the sodium bromide products are no longer stocked or carried because there are some kind of gray areas of that with the EPA at this point. But the other enhancers, of course, are EPA approved and they're highly effective. There's other routes you can go. There's the Easy Care, the Algatech, which is a weekly kind of maintenance dose you can put in there. And there's you can even use like a copper algicide if you wanted to go that route. But I really think those are more old school type ways of maintaining a pool, and the other enhancers are much easier and highly effective. Not that those aren't effective, they are, and there's other methods you can use. But I think once you find one that you like, you want to stick with it and use that particular product, and you can see a big difference in the chlorine usage as well as the possibility of getting algae in the pool and you having to shock the pool by the pool zeroing out. I did mention some factors like high cyanuric acid, and there are other factors like runtime in the filter cleaning that are also contributing to the pool not looking good. So make sure that you clean the filter regularly. If you charge for the filter cleaning and you're going every 6 months, you may want to go every 4 months or 3 times a year to make sure that pool doesn't turn on you. There's certain pools that need more filter cleanings than others. If you've been doing this for a while, you know what I'm talking about. Some pools, the filter doesn't need to be cleaned every 6 months, but you do it anyway. Other pools, the filter probably needs to be cleaned every 4 months, and you should probably put them on a 3 times a year cleaning. These are for the full-size DE filters and quad cartridge filters I'm talking about. Now, if you're in Florida or an area where you have like the single bullet cartridge filters, then you're going to clean those probably every month, and you're going to have that built into your service rate. It's kind of hard to charge for that. You just have to build it in when you're doing that filter cleaning with a single cartridge filter. But here in Southern California, we charge for the filter cleanings because they're always pretty large filters. Very rarely do you have a pool with an old 100 square foot cartridge filter, and we have very few sand filters in my area. So you have to kind of balance that by your area. But basically on the west, we really have full-size filters that we charge the customers to clean. And you want to charge a decent rate. I believe if you call around, you'll get different rates. But the going rate here in my area is anywhere from $80 to $120 for a filter cleaning. So it's quite a range on the price there. But you want to make sure you make money on the filter cleaning because it does take your time. And it is a way to have some extra money to kind of pad your profit margin as well. And the customer is certainly not going to go out there and clean their own filter. So it's a service that you're providing that they can't do. And if you've ever had customers clean their own filters, it's a big mess and they never do it correctly if they haven't done it before. Now, if they're a do-it-yourself homeowner that's done their pool before or is pretty savvy and they can do it themselves, they can probably do it. But from my experience, the ones that I've seen, they don't put diatomaceous earth in the filter, one of them didn't even put the clamp on tight enough. It was really kind of weird that it didn't explode off of there. And there's all kinds of different things. They'll put the cartridge filters in without putting them all the way down seated, and then you have to take the filter apart and do it yourself. So you're providing a service that they don't want to do anyway because it's really messy. I think the greatest thing that happens is when you're cleaning a filter and the customer comes out and they're like, wow, that's crazy. Look at all that stuff in there. That's gross. I would never be able to clean that thing. That's kind of like your best compliment because, you're cleaning a filter. It's really dirty. And sometimes they're like, oh, that was in my pool. And a lot of times it's diatomaceous earth. And I don't really explain to them that's diatomaceous earth covered with dirt. I'm like, yeah, that's all in there, and they're like, well, I don't want to have to touch that stuff. So you're doing something like a plumber, cleaning out a toilet or changing it or unclogging something really bad. You don't want to do that yourself. And so you're getting paid for that, and utilize that aspect of the filter cleanings to your advantage. The runtime of the pump is directly correlated with how well the pool looks or how easy it is to maintain. So run the pools longer, move those on-off trippers further apart, and don't worry about the customer complaining about their electricity bill or how much it costs to run the pump. I find that most people don't even care or even want to separate the pool pump from their equipment. I remember several years back, Edison is my service company here for electricity. They went around in one summer. I'm going to say it was like 2008 or 2009 or maybe 2010 with a survey. They would go to your house and check all your appliances. They did this as a complimentary service to kind of see how you're spending your electricity. And I think they really wanted to know where all the power was going themselves. And I remember one customer had this done at their pool, and he showed me the survey, and it was like 90% of electricity use was the pool, which is pretty crazy. And he was an older guy, didn't use his air conditioner. He's like, look at my pool pump, it's causing this much electricity being used. And it's true, it does raise it does cost more for a single speed pump to run longer. But if you have a variable speed pump, it's really not going to impact anything by running that VS pump longer. And hopefully most of the customers have VS pumps. I know that in my area, there's still a lot of single speed pumps out there, and that's going to cause more energy costs for the customer. But you want to run these pumps as long as you can, and this is going to add to the water quality being clear, algae free. The chemicals are going to be circulated in the pool. Everything's going to be working a lot better, and you won't be having to do the first thing I said you should avoid, which is shocking the pool. If you have a customer that wants to run their pool 2 or 3 hours a day, it's going to be a battle, and it's going to be a constant fight with algae, keeping the pool looking good, and it's something that just is not going to work. So you want to make sure you educate the customer, let them know that the pool needs to be run a certain amount of time. A lot of customers are like, I never use my pool, so I don't want to run it that much, so run it as little as possible. And you can explain to them, well, in that case, as little as possible is 8 hours a day. And they may say, well, can you do it 4 hours a day? And just explain to them that the pool needs to be circulated because it's really an unnatural thing to keep a body of water in your backyard looking blue. And the only way that can be done is by running the pool the correct amount of time. Another way you can save money on your pool route is to pass some of the chemical costs on to your customers. Now, of course, if you're going to use an enhancer like Polarex or a phosphate enzyme or borates to 50 parts per million, the customer is going to pay for that particular product. You're going to sell it to them at the beginning of the season. You can use different terms to sell this to them. You could use a seasonal algicide as a charge. You can also charge them for a conditioner, which is the old school way of charging for cyanuric acid, which a lot of people don't need to add to the pool anymore if you're using trichlor tablets. I'll touch on that in a second also when I talk about the trichlor tablets. And you want to charge them for, anything that you're putting in the pool above and beyond your normal maintenance dose. A lot of people will itemize all the chemicals they use in the pools. That's perfectly fine. If you're using an app like Skimmer, you can do that easily. But a lot of times it's kind of one of those things where if you're billing people and you're getting a bill that's always different, it causes confusion. It's much better, in my opinion, to do a flat rate, including the maintenance dose of certain chemicals. And then if you have pools where you need to charge for extra chemicals, these would be heavy use pools or heavy pools with heavy debris where the chemicals are always being used up by all the debris in the pool, absorbing or having the chlorine being used up there. Especially if it's like a eucalyptus tree, those are notoriously bad for the chlorine holding in the pool. The way I normally do it is I'll tell the customer, because their pool falls out of the normal range of the maintenance dose, I'm going to charge them for a bucket of shock. I usually buy a 25-pound or 50-pound bucket of Cal Hypo. I let them know the price. It's pretty steep, of course, but they understand that, my normal maintenance dose of chlorine cannot manage their pool. And then, of course, you would want to pass on the cost of the trichlor tablets to your customers. It used to be we could absorb the cost, but of course, for the last 3 or 4 years, you just can't do that. You don't know, you can't predict what the cost is going to be next year. And it's one of those things where if there are indeed tariffs, there's plastic buckets that the tablets use, even though they're manufactured here, it's going to, of course, raise that price by 25 or 30%. So I expect tablets to stay high as far as cost and even maybe go even higher. So that's one expense that you cannot absorb. You have to charge customers for the 3-inch tablets. Now, if you are including them in your service, you may want to move those out of your service. Sometimes it's painful for the customer, but I like to explain to them in a letter about the cost of tablets. Sometimes I go over a brief history of why the price went up, but these are to customers that are already paying for the 3-inch tablets, and I raise the price on them. So it's a little harder when you're absorbing the cost and you're having to move that out and put it on the customer. And of course, it's something that takes a lot of explaining to do. Most people are okay with it, and you may want to gradually do it on your route. So I've had many pool pros ask me, well, how am I going to move out 80 customers that are getting tablets without them going crazy? I tell them, well, first move out the ones that they're not going to care or give you trouble. You should know your customers by now. You're going to know which ones, when you explain to them that you can no longer provide the 3-inch chlorine tablets to them, they'll have to pay for that separately at the beginning of the season. You know which customers are going to receive that well, and you also know which customers are going to be complaining. And so maybe gradually do it. Let the customer know that you're going to give them a surcharge for the tablets to absorb some of the cost, and maybe not charge them the full amount of the bucket, but charge them some of your costs the first season, and then let them know that next year you're going to have them pay the full cost of the tablets. Something like that really helps with those customers that are not going to take kindly to you having them pay for the tablets. So hopefully you have 3-inch tablets already outside of your service rate, and the customers are paying for that. But think of anything else that you can move out to the customer that's not going to be too painful. And anything you put in the pool besides your maintenance dose of muriatic acid and liquid chlorine or Cal Hypo, it's going to be charged to the customer. So make sure that you are doing that and that you have some plan in place to recapture and save money, because all of that, of course, goes towards your bottom line and making you more profitable. If you're looking for other podcasts, you can find those on my website, swimmingpoollearning.com. On the banner, click on the podcast icon. And if you're interested in the coaching program that I have, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless.